Labor broking is a form of outsourcing in South Africa, which companies contact labor brokers to provide them with labor, in which the labor broker will handle all aspects of the worker, from interviews to recruitment, HR, admin, payroll, and even transport. Which means when a company hires a worker, they actually hire a labor broker who hires a laborer. And firstly, I want us to look at the pros and cons of having labor brokers in South Africa before any of us can draw a conclusion whether they're good or if they are bad. Anyway, number one, which are the pros, starting with the pros, says workers can quickly be found at last minute. They do a thorough background check and criminal records in their pool of laborers. They provide specialized skills with greater flexibility in terms of fluctuating staff requirements. Workers are usually cheaper than ordinary employees. They give housekeepers, gardeners, builders with the opportunity to find work because many people in South Africa do not have access to the internet in order to search for work. Hence, they can register by labor brokers and have their details kept for when there is work available. Okay, we have looked at the pros of having labor brokers. I would like us to now look at the cons. Okay, con number one, we'll start with labor brokers are responsible for the casualization of jobs by undermining the workers as temporary workers while they're doing permanent work and earn less than permanent staff. 2. Labor brokers do not create any jobs but sponge off the labors of others, as they are merely intermediaries to access jobs that already exist, which in most cases would have existed as previously permanent full-time jobs. Number 3. Labor brokers do not practice equal pay for equal work value, promoting the culture that workers employed via labor brokers are just not valuable. Can you imagine that, guys? Okay. Number 4. Labor brokers are also responsible for the intensification of the rate of exploitation of workers as they circumvent labor laws and regulations with practice that contradict principles of decent work by driving down wages, meaning a pittance for a salary while businesses are racking up more profit than ever. Workers work longer hours without compensation for public holidays and Saturdays. The very same workers work Monday to Monday, 365, have no annual or basic leave, and have less sick leave. These workers do not get pay slips, resulting in no tax deductions, no UIF, no pension or provident fund, no medical aid or housing subsidy, and are denied the right to collective bargaining and exclusion from legislative protection and basic conditions of employment. In the end, these workers are dumped into the government social security system, increasing the state burden to provide for them in their pension life, meaning taxpayers are subsidizing employers to make super profit while they practice this practice, which is labor broking. Number 5, the last con that I will mention, says labor brokers contribute to slow-paced transformation in the economy. Our country is trapped in a developmental paradigm shift for over the last 24 years post-democracy, as economic legacies of apartheid persist in modern South Africa. While the face of casualization of workers is predominantly the black working class youth employed by labor brokers, a further assault to the dignity of workers, their families, and their living standards, meaning that the black majority are more valuable to poverty than any other racial group in South Africa, earning 63% of what their counterparts who are white earned. Great. Fostering poverty, inequality, what's new in South Africa? Okay, enough with the pros and cons. I'd like to get into the examples of how these practices affect South Africa. And for example, in 2011, a permanent South African post office worker earned 8,000. In the same year, the South African post office paid 4,000 per month to its labor broker for each casual worker. However, the labor broker only paid 2,000 of this income to the casual worker. The casual employees were not given adequate wet weather clothing and denied basic benefits such as tea and coffee allowance, unlike the permanent workers. Example number 2, a casual supermarket cashier is likely to earn less than their full-time counterparts at around 2,120 Rand per month with 30 hours labor week. Jessica, although not her real name, has been in retail for 7 years and still doesn't understand why she is still not permanent. She endures because she has 2 kids and their father is a construction worker earning a little more than she does. Her salary lasts for 10 days of the month if she stretches it. After that, it's over to microlenders. Number 3, in 2012, minimum wage in forestry was at 2,420 Rand 41 cent a month. Bear in mind that this is the 3rd most dangerous job after shipping and mining. 82% of workers employed by large growers were casuals hired through labor brokers, with 5% on fixed-term contracts and the remaining 13% permanent. In conclusion and in closing, I'd like to mention that the Labor Court has ruled that employees hired by labor brokers who remain employed for more than 3 months should be hired permanently by the client company. COSATU has been lobbying for the abolishment of labor brokers since 2012, stating that labor broking is the equivalent of trading human beings as commodities like meat and vegetables. Moreover, it can be likened to human trafficking, as they sell the labor of workers to the highest bidder and pay them the lowest possible wages and pocketing the difference. I personally strongly agree that labor brokers should be banned in South Africa, as there are more cons than pros. I believe while labor law in South Africa is deciding, labor brokers' commission should be kept at 10% or like 25% once-off fee that should be bound by the bargaining council, and deregistration of non-compliant labor brokers as a suggestion. COSATU adds that regulation of the industry will not work because capacity constraints within the Labor Department to enforce existing legislation, and that a ban against labor brokers may be simpler than detailed regulation, thereby simplifying enforcement. It makes sense. South Africa has all these wonderful laws, legislation, and regulation, but there's a big problem with enforcing regulation and regulating regulation as it is. So, guys, thank you for listening to this video. From me,